Welcome to the Resolve.ai webinar series. Before we get started, let us quickly go over a few housekeeping items. We love interactive events, so please feel free to ask any question in the Q&A section, which can be accessed at the bottom of your screen. We'll answer those questions towards the end during the Q&A session. If there are more questions than we can answer during the session, we'll get back to you, we promise. This webinar is being recorded, and a recording link will be shared after the event. Thanks again for joining today, and let us get today's session started, and welcome our host.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this session. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. It's a global space, so people join this webinar from all the time zones. I'm your host, Manish Sharma, and today we'll be talking about AI-based architecture for service desk and employee support. Why are we talking about this? Why are we talking about architecture? Because the architecture is clearly changing right now between, there's a big transition underway from the architecture that was and the architecture that is going to be. And it has implication for all of us. A lot of us service desk managers, CIOs, CTOs, people who are responsible for employee experience. It matters to us. We need to kind of plan out, how we are going to play this in next 1, 2, 3 years, depending on what happens in the transition. So without much further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So before we even go to the architecture, let's talk about employee needs. Someone might ask, why are we talking about employee needs when the session was supposed to be very techie architecture-based session? But the thing is, eventually architectures serve people, architectures serve employees, architecture serves customers. So, you cannot create a new architecture or fathom the need for a new architecture unless until you look at what is happening with the employees, the people that it is supposed to serve. So let's spend a few minutes there. Obviously, and by the way, this is my favorite quote. Someone said this in LinkedIn, and I took their permission to replicate this. But what she said was that there are perks like foosball table and catered food, etc. They used to matter a lot earlier. But in the year that we are in, 2021 and beyond, there are other things that will be considered bells and whistles. And those things will be tech and flexibility and how easy it is for people to work in office. How do they feel productive? Things of that nature. I just love that quote because it kind of captures what is happening around us and the things that we need to react to. Employees, if you look at it, they want to. A lot of us are still working from home. I'm working from home, and some of you might be. I know many people have started working from office, which is great. I cannot wait to start working from office myself. But while this partial home, partial work is going to continue, looks like for some time, people still want to feel productive. They're working on something. They want to get it accomplished. They don't want to deal with enterprise friction. By the way, enterprise friction is a term that we have coined to kind of denote what happens when you're trying to get something done, but you cannot do it due to various reasons. You don't have access to that. You don't understand something. You don't have access to the right person. Your laptop is, whatever the issue might be. but all of those issues which stop you from doing what you're doing, we call that enterprise friction. So when you're working in a remote environment, especially, and you're dealing with enterprise friction, that can be pretty tough. And finally, I think there is a need for people to feel less isolated, right? Like we are feeling isolated, all of us. So how do we reduce that isolation? That's also kind of, part of the things that are in employees' mind. And therefore, in reaction to this, what is happening in service desk is also changing, right? Service desk is changing to what employees feeling, but also changing to what is happening all around us, because the context is changing. The context in which we live is changing. So the old service delivery model, all of us know what it was. It was very simple. Employee had a trouble. We tell them go create a ticket. They don't want to go create a ticket in the ticketing system because they hate it. They instead make a phone call or they write an email. The email is incomplete. Now we have to go back and chase them and say, hey, you send me an email, but it seems to be, I don't understand your issue. And then the back and forth begins between the employee and the service desk. At some point during this interaction, employee really gets frustrated and forms an opinion, rightly or wrongly, about the service desk, saying, I don't like that interaction. And that is bad news for all of us who are in service desk industry. So this was the traditional model. I've not even captured things like how the ticket might go from L1 to L2 to L3, whatever, right? Those kind of complexity I'm not even talking about, but I'm talking about the basic, service delivery model that exists today for most part. But employees over a period of time, they're showing that they're not happy with this, right? And couple of things that we kind of picked up along the way is employees are saying we will much rather prefer an integrated service desk. That means, don't send me here for HR, for IT, go somewhere else. For finance, go somewhere else. Facility, nobody knows, right? Like don't give me that kind of situation. If I'm working remotely, provide me with a single simple interface to connect to all the service desks, right? Why do I need to go to 15 different places to get help? So that is one thing that we are finding which has changed. There's clearly a voice of the customer there. Second thing is that everyone is using collaborative tools much more than they were using earlier. So you must have heard about Teams and Slack, how much more they are being used today. For Teams, I can give you some data. Before the pandemic, before April of last year, they were at around, I think 20 or 30 million daily users. Today, it is believed there are upwards of 200 million daily users. So 10 times growth, right? 900% growth. That is, and we are not done yet, right? There are more people who are jumping into that. Similarly, Slack, Zoom, all of them are also seeing more, people jumping in. But Teams seems to have captured vast swath of accounts where companies where they don't want to pay extra for collaboration tool and they'll want one, and Teams has actually captured that space very, very well. The second thing is that we are all getting used to more technology at home, so we are using conversational interface for our TV, for our, by the way, TV doesn't get my accent. I'm so frustrated with Google Home. I keep saying, my kids laugh at it, and I say something to TV and it shows me something entirely different. So it doesn't get my accent, but my kids do all right. But the conversational interface is here. I think we are all getting used to it, whether it's your vacuum cleaner, to your front porch light, to your TV, to whatever, right? So we are getting used to it in cars and outside. So the question is, this kind of changes the expectations a little bit in employees' mind. The new model, therefore, if we kind of add these few things, the new model seems to be that employees would want to come from an interface, a channel, collaboration tool of their choice, whether it's Teams or Slack or something like that, and they will want to access all their service desk from there. And by the way, instead of having a long conversation with someone, if they can get their issue resolved within 10 seconds or 15 seconds, they will love that, right? This seems to be the new construct which has really caught on to the imagination of both the employees and the agents. Why it has caught on? Employees, it's very simple, because they obviously find it convenient. They find like they have a help right next to them whenever they want it. They can access that help without any barrier to, to picking up the phone and calling someone. It's really easy. You can go ask a question anytime. There's no amount of stupid questions you can ask. You can ask whatever you want. So it makes them feel less isolated, less stressed out, and it reduces the enterprise friction. Now, from the agent side or the service desk manager side, it's great because what is happening is a lot of the simple issues are going away. They are being auto resolved by the system, and now you're getting only tickets that needs your attention, right? Not you're not getting all the tickets, but you're getting the tickets that you really need your attention. And obviously, needless to say, a lot of this here is conversational AI. So there's there is bot here which is answering questions. There's knowledge management which is supporting the bot. There's a bunch of other things. Now, and obviously, let's not forget the amount of automation you can do in solutions like this. So this seems to be the future. And if you double click on it, basically there are more functions here. For example, employee can chat with the end user. Employee doesn't have to look at a ticketing system at all. The bot will create the tickets and so on and so forth. So the ease for employee goes like amazingly high, and the service desk manager's KPI improve. Not only for service desk, by the way, broadly speaking, the conversational interface is going to be broader than that, in our opinion. Your learning systems within enterprise will be conversational based. Actually, we have one. Creating and sharing knowledge, getting everyday tasks done, like booking a meeting, things of that nature. Imagine almost having a personal assistant for each employee, which is going to give them support to go through the day and get things done. And this is our vision. This is how it is going to be. And the new model, and we are going to go talk about architecture very soon. The new model also says incident management is okay, service desk is okay, but employee support and employee enablement is a bigger thing, right? You cannot just say, listen, I provided you a great ticketing solution, so you should be happy. Or, okay, you know what, I integrated all your service desk, now you should be happy. But I think it goes beyond that a little bit, because employee support is bigger than that. And employee support includes, are you able to upskill the employee when they needed to be? Do they have all the project management support that they need? Do they have access to enterprise knowledge? There's some amount of knowledge, enterprise knowledge, which is not even part of any service desk, but employees should have access to that, right? So it's if you think of Venn diagram, the solution seems to be a little bit bigger than just a service desk. So this is the desired state, right? This is where I have kind of drawn a picture for you from where it is going, where and why it is going. What is the factors that are driving this momentum towards a change? Now the question is, what will it take to go there, right? And today there are multiple aspects to that problem. Today we are only going to focus on the architecture part, right? Like, I'm not going to focus on the cultural part and adoption and bunch of other things. We are going to talk about the architecture part today. So within architecture, if you look at the the progression of architecture, it is started from on-prem, or most of us had on-prem systems 2 decades ago, right? And on-prem systems were an upgrade to Excel, of course, right? They could do, instead of an Excel, you can now manage your things in on-prem system. Great. It worked out fine for some time. And then around 10 years back, SaaS-based solutions started to come up, right? More and more SaaS-based solutions started to come up. By 2014, 2015, there were like tons of SaaS-based solutions out there, which are doing the same thing, by the way, but they were doing it in cloud. Their accessibility was better. They were, pricing was better. You can just subscribe to it, a bunch of things, right? We all know how it went. And I think this line, I didn't put timelines to this, but somewhere around 2 years back or so, I think there's a line to be drawn there, because the architecture has fundamentally shifted now. So from a ticketing system on cloud, now I think the new architecture is the AI-based architecture, where you need a new architecture which is very easy to bring various AI kind of capabilities into the product. And all of you, I'm sure, already attend a lot of webinars or other events, and you know what I'm talking about, largely speaking. But let's talk about what does AI mean for service desk and how the progression is going to go. So, clearly, most of you would have heard about conversational AI service desk. You might have been to our website. You already know what it is. But from here, it keeps going up. This is not the end game, right? There's more AI that is going to come in employee support area. And you will see a lot of innovations coming in here, and a lot of companies are working on this space. So next thing you are going to see is machine learning issue resolution, right? So there's a resolution / recommendation engine that is going to tell the agents, what to do in a problem, right? So it's going to give 2 or 3 recommendations based on percentages, and it'll say, based on what I was able to read about the ticket, I didn't resolve this ticket myself, but here you go. This is what I think should happen. So even new agents or newer agents will have something to go on with. They will have some, someone's kind of suggesting to them what to do and stuff like that. And they can just, based on the session, they can just click buttons and kind of get it done. So this is a machine learning based issue resolution recommender that will come, in my opinion, within a year. You will start to see, companies offering that. Then there's visual AI, and part of this we already do actually. So some of these are not necessarily in exactly the sequence, but visual AI is where we have put them in a sequence in which they will be widely adopted, not necessarily in which order they will be available. So visual AI means, document reading, right? Ability of the bot to read the document, ability of the bot to read an image, ability of the bot to read a screen, right? So someone submits a screen, the bot reads the screen, finds out the error, correlates that with which printer you are talking about, and therefore what recommendation needs to be done. That is the kind of location where we're going to reach them. And these technologies are already here, by the way, right? This is not something I'm telling you, which is futuristic, we cannot be done. It's just a matter of now connecting the dots here. The third one is speech and telephony. So remember, some of our workforces are already used to just picking the phone and talking. And you cannot persuade maybe 20% of this workforce to come to a bot. Well, there's going to be telephony and speech-based recognition. You don't even have to do anything. In my laptop, I just need to click a button and start talking, and the system will then figure out what to do for me. So this is also not too far away, right? So I have tried to, because when people think AI, people think mostly conversational AI. They think this is what AI is. But AI has a lot of facets. There's a lot of research going on, right, in AI. And these are the kind of AI that you can expect very well within next 1 to 2 years. Most of them will be in production and you guys will be using it. So this is a whole lot of change to consider and see. And why is this important? Why am I telling you what is going to happen in the future? Because only the products that depend on us on an AI architecture, which is a different architecture from a typical architecture, will be able to support these quick movements and new features coming in and so on and so forth. It's not going to be possible if you're based on an older architecture to be able to bring this new magical features based on the demand of the customers very quickly. So if you talk about older architecture, just to make a distinction between older architecture and the new architecture. So older architecture is typically rigid. I have been told by a lot of clients where we are replacing other systems. Oh, my system, I don't like it. It sends too many emails. It cannot be configured. They say it is configurable, but it's not really configurable. I had to get more services partners, etc., etc. As a matter of fact, the simple metric says, if you have bought into one of those larger, service desk products, without naming some of them, if you're spending $1 on the licensing, you're probably going to spend between $1 to $2 on services on top of it, just to use the product. And that talks to the rigidity of the product, how rigid they are. Second, they don't have, they're not really microservices driven. So the modern architecture takes each of the components of the, within the product, talk to each other using microservices. So they talk to each other using APIs, in other words, right? So they're not a big monolithic piece of code that has been written that is single code, right? They are things, even if you create a ticket, for example, is a API call from one module to another module, and so on and so forth. So advantage of these microservices based products is that they are very easy to change, upgrade, and so on and so forth, and fit really well. But most of the older technologies, even SaaS based, are not, many of them are not microservices driven. Third is that a lot of them are not even AI enabled, right? When I say, I talked about a bunch of different kind of AIs that are already making place and will be coming soon. You need a platform that can actually bring all that AI to you, right? You cannot go into research mode for each one of them and take 3 years to bring. By the time you bring those 5 things, it's already 15 years and the market has gone somewhere else. So the older architecture will have a struggle because they don't have AI enablement in their platform. The next one is, I'll talk about, they're not available in new channels. We were talking about the, Teams and Slack and whatnot. These are new latest channels where employees are already, they are there. So if you use Teams, your organization use Teams, you probably know that employees are already sitting there on Teams as one of the top 3 apps every day. So therefore, it makes sense to provide the service in that place, that channel, instead of that. And a lot of these older products are really struggling to kind of capture the essence of, and the problem is not just being able to put the technology in. The problem is also mindset. A lot of these older companies are not getting the importance that it's not just yet another channel, right? A lot of them think, oh, I need, maybe I need a channel in Teams. It's not that. It's not that simple. It's a whole change of mindset, and that's where some of them will struggle. Then integration. This is a big thing because, while your service desk can do a good thing of tracking the issues on its own, it is almost meaningless in today's world if the system cannot talk to 50 other enterprise systems that you have to kind of coordinate, to kind of, manage workflows, and traditional systems have struggled. I mean, I look at how they have just barely managed to integrate with HR now, right? Because employee onboarding, employee offboarding is very important, and they just barely made it now, and they're like, oh great, we did great, we integrated with HR system. So what? There, apart from HR, there are, 50 other systems where, a workflow and a process might take you, right? So again, their solution is, listen, talk to a service provider, they will help you integrate. So that is the old way of thinking, and this is not going to work. And finally, automation seems to be so difficult for these traditional systems due to the way the architecture is written, that if you want to do any big automation, that means you have to spend, if you want to do automation to gain X dollars, you probably have to spend 3X dollars upfront, and you'll have to calculate ROI. So automation is not easy, right? And one thing the word that I want to associate with automation is easy automation. There is literally no other way of automation that is worth it, because we have all done those 9-month projects costing $750,000, and they're useless. They don't even prove the ROI at the end of the day. So these are the challenges with the older architecture. The new architecture, by the way, they are always low code or no code. That means you don't have to do much in order to get things done and do easy automation. I was calling you. They are plug and play. They're microservices driven. I won't repeat it. I already talked about how microservices are very important. Third, they are AI enabled. That means they live in an ecosystem where there's plenty of AI, and they can leverage the AI from the ecosystem where they live. So the way it is going to work out is, each of these companies are not going to develop their entire AI. Nobody can, right? I mean, leave Microsoft, Google, and AWS. Apart from that, nobody is going to be able to develop all the AI in-house, right? So therefore, the smarter of these companies are going to leverage what is out there, and incorporate that in such a way that the end user benefit. And that is what I call AI enablement. And therefore, the advantage here is that you can capture 10 more new technologies, but you don't have to code all those 10 new technologies. So you can potentially play in an ecosystem where you can bring new changes to the customer, very, very easily. And that is very, very important for someone to consider how this is being done. Then personalization. This I cannot, talk about this enough. Um, does your service desk treat each person slightly differently and give them personalized responses, personalized automation, personalized experience? And that is so difficult to achieve in the traditional ecosystem because they literally live on an island. They don't integrate with the rest of the system, so they don't understand how who you are, right? So if Manish Sharma comes and asks a question versus someone else comes, and how do I treat them differently and in a personalized way which is meaningful? That is a big thing. A lot of customers ask for that, by the way, once they get to know. Mark my words, personalization is pretty big in service desk, and you are going to see more and more people asking and demanding that feature. And that needs to be configured. So your product needs to be able to configure personalized solutions. So that is, I strongly believe that's part of the new AI architecture. The next one is available in new channels. And, I've been talking about Teams, Slacks, and so on and so forth. So your product should be available in new channels for it to kind of, make sense to the new age of service desk. And finally, and by the way, it's not just available in new channels, but these channels might be central to your thinking, right? It's one thing to say I will make it available on Teams. Another thing to say that I am Teams centric. I understand what is happening in Teams ecosystem. I know what Teams new advances are coming, what Microsoft is doing, new features are coming, and I will be the one who will be able to give you the best solution out there. That is being centric, team centric, as opposed to a lot of these larger companies which are saying, oh, I can just, what, people seem to be asking for Teams. So you know what? Okay, I heard them, give them a Teams app. That's not it. That's not, absolutely not there. And finally, the pre-built integration. I've been talking about how you need to play in the ecosystem. And any new architecture has to be really easy on integrating with anything. So for example, assume a client work with Altipro in HR. They work with ADP. They work with Oracle. They work with SAP. They work with some student services, software, right? How can you leverage the information and the and the processes around you to make things happen? That is very important, and I increasingly believe that is a job of service desk. So having now kind of laid down what kind of architecture is a different architecture, new architecture, let's talk about the cost of transition, right? And who's going to pay? So this is important because, I think most of you might agree by this time that yes, we need new architecture, we need a so there are two ways to do it, obviously, right? One is, your older traditional software will upgrade it, but the question is what happens there? There's some challenge for the old traditional systems to upgrade to the new one, right? One is, and I will put this as number one, absolutely number one, which is culture. You have a culture in a company, you have a way of thinking. I'm sure a lot of audience here also, each organization is the same. So how difficult it is to manage change, right? To get everyone to rally towards one direction and so on and so forth. Some existing employees might have some, they love particular module, they have a point of view, and oh my God, this, the human side of it is perhaps the most difficult. But not to say that the architecture part is easy too, right? Because you literally will have to probably write a code from the scratch. You'll have to have a new approach and so on and so forth. So you're literally creating a new software in the same place. So that's a challenge. It's not an easy thing to do. And finally, the cost consideration. How much will these companies spend, right? So one of the largest company, and again, I'll not name, they've already bought three they bought three chatbot companies. Three, if you, it's a public company, you can look it up. They bought in quick succession in last 2 or 3 years three chatbot companies, and they still don't have AI functionality down. So sure, there is willing to spend money. So it depends really, right? Like how do you? There'll be cost to doing this, and obviously some companies have bigger pockets and some don't. So what does it mean to you as a customer, right? Like if you're thinking about this change, if you're wondering how I'm going to go to a better service delivery model, how I'm going to increase my KPIs, how do I bring my employees next generation of employee experience, how do I think of service desk in bigger terms, right? Not just, okay, I solved your IT help desk problem, but a bigger terms. How do I do that, right? The way is, there are three costs to you if you don't do anything. One is, obviously, you will have delay in accessing new technology. You will not have new technology. You will therefore not have the new service delivery model, and that is a cost, right? That's an opportunity cost, real opportunity cost. And this opportunity cost is, in multiple ways. It comes, I'll talk in the next slide, but there's a cost to you. Second is, if you're transitioning through architecture with your vendor, then you are going to go through with some pain. The pain, like I said in the last slide, that the vendor will go through, you are going to go through that pain. So it's painful for you as well. And lastly, cost of transition being passed on. Right? If there's a lot of cost of transition, some of it might come your way. So there might be monetary implication as well. So the point I'm trying to make is, and I'm not saying that by default, there's no company which can figure this out. I'm sure there are some of the existing companies which are going to pivot and they're going to do it very well. But there is a risk associated with the traditional companies pivot, and the cost being, you got to think what is your cost in doing that. And finally, why does it matter to you personally, right? If I kind of talk about, we talked about broadly, but what does it matter to you? So one, end user expectations, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, are already changed. You cannot help it. That genie is out of the bottle. So they are looking everywhere. They're talking to their friends, colleagues, and they're figuring out that some other companies are providing better service. And that is a pressure that is going to keep increasing on you, right? People are going to come, senior management is going to go see something in a conference. They'll come to you and say, hey, why are you not doing this, right? So there will be more pressure on you as the time goes on. By the way, every month, right? Every month. The second is, you are missing an opportunity to upgrade your service desk, because if you don't upgrade your service desk, then, and the associated benefits that come with it, the leadership that you are displaying, the transformation figure that you're becoming for the company, you are just letting it go. If you don't do it for one more year, you're letting the initiative go away from you, and who knows next year who's going to do that. So I think that is a personal risk for anyone who's not doing anything, to be honest. And finally, I think there's a bigger picture here, that service desk, in my humble opinion, and this is maybe a radical idea, but I don't think that the IT operations group in 5 years will do what they are doing today. Today, what are they doing? They are providing service to the employees and they're solving tickets. I don't think in 5 years, successful service desks are going to be doing that. They will do that, of course, right, with the help of technology, but they will become the automation hub for the company. That means if finance needs some automation, they're going to come to service desk and say, you seem to have the right technology and tools to do it. You have the right expertise. We saw you, automating your service desk. Can you help me automate my expense management, or can you help me create a process flow here? So you remember that BPM function that used to be there, which was almost always outsourced and at great expense and great slow, amazingly slow projects. I think back and I cannot fathom how that industry survived. But listen, that is going to change. And I think the service desk people will kind of start taking internal projects and drive the internal automation agenda. And that's a great news for service desk leaders. So that's how I look at it. This is why this architecture discussion matters for enterprise leaders and service desk leaders. And I think this is something that you should be looking into right away, because it matters to you, and it is not stopping. It's not something that you can ignore. It's happening right now everywhere, very, very quickly. So hopefully, I know we didn't, we could have gone probably in more detail, but feel free to reach out to us individually if you want to like double click on the architecture or something like that. But I hope this was added some value to you. I'm open to some question and answers and see if some questions out there that I can answer for people. I see a question that has come in for me. And the question is, how soon can we expect other AI changes to come? So I think the gentleman who has asked this question is referring to, this slide, if I'm not wrong, this slide. And I think what they're asking is, if conversational AI is already here, when do you think this is going to happen? How soon, right? I truly believe that the technology is here, this is ready. But I truly believe by early next year, you will start to see, when you go to a conference next year, you will start to see demos for all of them, right? You will see speech, telephony, visual AI, maybe in a year or so, and you will, a lot of people will start to adopt in 2022. So some of this is already here and some of this will be adopted in 2022, but I don't think I'm talking anything beyond 2022 here, right? I mean, for me, by the way, personally, it's very difficult to see 3 years away because the things are changing so fast that you cannot see 3 years away or 5 years away. I don't know how people used to plan for 5 years earlier, but that is almost an impossible proposition at this point of time. So as far as we can see, this is how we see. Any other questions? Well, if there are no other questions, looks like we might be able to give you your 20 minutes back. Really appreciate a lot of people joined in today from different parts of the world. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And feel free to stop by our website, book a demo or have a discussion with us. Thank you so much.